Building the Future. =RK equals. Part 2. Guest Quarters. Tarkin Family Estate. Iriadu. Much later that night I laid down in the bed and bargained with Shark T. While she was infuriated by the deals I made earlier in the evening, her attention finally settled on what would be happening tomorrow. I would be going to visit the Jedi prisoners and vet them about their complicity with the coup. T was concerned that I would see them dead if I deemed them a complication, no matter their culpability in the plot. She was right too. Why would I ever consider sparing a potential threat? I asked, bewildered. I no longer need to play by the nice boys rules, T. You Jedi ensured, when you killed my wife and got yourselves branded public enemy number 1. What do you want? T asked. She was finally coming to terms with who and what I really was. It wasn't like pleading to my better nature would help the Jedi. The tiny bit that was left of it was utterly blind for the bastard's plights. What I want? I asked. I want my wives alive. I want to be back in my time so I could stop the Empire from disintegrating. What could you possibly offer me, Jedi? I sneered. Power, freely given. A vow not to distract you in combat. One I will keep, T declared. You can't be sure about the latter, my dear. Not when I might be fighting your friends. I pointed out. I could certainly keep that promise when you're facing the Separatists or their Jedi. T countered. I'll consider it if you keep the ruckus in my head up to a minimum. Otherwise I might be forced to do something you'll most definitely regret. I could sense her presence flinch. T knew that the two reasons why I kept her were because I could draw a bit of power from her and the fact that for some arcane reason I still liked the infernal woman. However, none of the above would stop me from exorcising her pretty red ass and trapping her into something if she became more trouble than she was worth. Done. T vowed. Then convince me how the Jedi imprisoned on this world could be used for the war effort without stabbing me in the back. I told her, and she did. It's a deal then. If they play ball. I thought at her. T grit her teeth and retreated into the back of my mind. =RK equals. Wilhuff's bedroom. Tarkin Family Estate. Iriadu. Wilhuff and Thalassa Tarkin sat in a pair of sinfully comfortable armchairs facing each other. They were sipping Nubian wine and discussing the meeting from earlier that evening. I was becoming afraid you saw your favorite general as Palpatine's second coming. Thalassa hummed happily. I'm glad I was wrong on that account. Only Tarkin's ingranted upper core upbribing kept him from snorting derisively, though it was very, very tempting. Vale. Wasn't Palpatine. No matter how much Wilhuff trusted and believed in the former Chancellor, he could have gone against Sheev if he had a good enough reason to, which of course was a preposterous thought. Vale however. Tarkin bowed his head as if conceding the point. He knew what Vale intended. He agreed. However, he couldn't go against the man no matter how much a part of him craved to. Wilhuff was bound to the Sith and would follow him to whatever awaited them at the end of the road. There was no choice left for him. Vale saw to that, the magnificent bastard. Tarkin both respected and loathed the man for what he did at Kamino. Now all he had left was to follow, advise and if possible ensure that his family would get the best from the deal forced upon them all. Vale won't seek direct political power for himself, any more he now has as Mandalore anyway. At Kamino, when he saved us all, I got a glimpse of his mind. I know what he wants. He will avoid becoming either Chancellor or Emperor like the plague, because getting such a post will be a disaster. Tarkin explained. Then perhaps we should maneuver him into it. Thalassa suggested. Trust me about this, wife, if in nothing else, doing so would end poorly. If he accepts anyway, he might just wait in the wings until a useful puppet present themselves while the galaxy falls apart. Then he'll retaliate and it won't be business as usual. Wilhuff explained. This isn't reassuring. His wife frowned. It wasn't meant to be. Vale doesn't play by the same rules most of us do. That could either be a problem or opportunity. Thalassa, he doesn't want to rule. As far as his goals are met, he won't care about the details or who actually runs the galaxy, Tarkin said. The man's a Sith. Yes? What's your point? He sees a formal political office as a burden that will limit his freedom and chain him to Coruscant. He's a Sith as you pointed out. He has more than enough personal power already. What he seeks is enough military power and clout not to deal with the usual concerns that plague us mortals. Wilhuff smiled in amusement. Give him a decent military to play with, the inevitable trouble his Mandalorians will stir for him to deal with, and you wouldn't be able to force him into a position of more power and responsibility if you tried. Tarkin's one big fear was that the core politics might actually force Vale to take the throne when the time came. If that disaster came to pass, he was certain Del-Qatar would sooner rather than later lose his patience and go old-fashioned Sith on everyone. That would be a disaster. He had to do his best to keep his wife and extended family from getting any traction on ideas in that vein. He was afraid to contemplate what Vale would do when he got wind of such a scheme. Curious. A contemplative expression appeared on Thalassa's face. I see why you brought him. Let him play with his toy soldiers while we help rule the galaxy for him. Is that it? More or less, Tarkin agreed. In his name. As long as we don't inconvenience his plans would be a better way to put it. Vale intended to be a tyrant in all but name, while outsourcing most of the whole ruling business while he concentrated on things he deemed more interesting. Thalassa and the rest weren't exactly right. If they played their cards right, they would get to rule at a big part of the galaxy as they saw fit. It's just that none of them comprehended what would mean to try managing or deceiving Vale. He would see them dead even if it meant a civil war to achieve it. Tarkin wanted to explain that point, to make it crystal clear. However, he held his tongue. Doing so might jeopardize the plan, even if it might just keep his family from committing a grave mistake. Their support was vital. Speaking up would mean acting in cross purposes with Vale, so Wilhaf held his tongue and changed the topic. Part 3 = RK = Stockade. Gar-base glory. Iriadu. I should put a nice evaluation in the base commandant's file. He was a properly paranoid bastard who had the stockade wrapped in almost enough protection to make Imperial intelligence approve. 2 companies of dug-in troopers in heavy armor and weapons, minefields, automated turrets, a walker platoon, and there was a cap in the air ready to incinerate the whole area, all to contain 4 Jedi. I made a note to get the fellow in charge on my to watch and promote list, then went to meet Jedi Master Hiriswel Madoran. We managed to avoid each other the last time I was on Iriadu. However, this time he wasn't going to be so lucky. The Jedi's cell was nicely sealed shut and covered with remotely detonated explosives. My mood rose up a notch. Once I'm done here, I was going to meet the base commander and offer them a job. Madoran was cooling his heels in the middle of his cell where he was suspended by a force field keeping him honest. Nothing a Jedi couldn't get out of. However, if set up properly, you would need the raw power to survive the explosives set up around the cell and all the firepower which could be brought to bear on you. I doubted there were many people who could pull it off and remain in one piece. What the crap are you? I didn't recognize his species. Madoran looked like a somewhat humanoid-shaped clump of vines. There were stalks with eyes too, which turned to look at me. What's up? The plant man asked in clear basic. Huh? That was certainly new. All I could get from the Jedi was boredom and curiosity, which earned him a few points. Hiriswel Madoran? I asked to be sure. Yes? You're the Sith. Did you come to finish the job? 8 eyes blinked at me. Weird. You would think that by now I would be accustomed to seeing all kinds of aliens. That depends. Did you know about the coup and were you a part of it? I inquired. The only coup I know about is that with the Separatists. If I had anything to do with it, Dooku would be safely dead. The vines shifted in something resembling a half. How was he talking? Air vibrations? Because could see no mouth, not that he might necessarily need any with being a plant. Jedi coup on Coruscant. Apparently your friends managed to off Palpatine and piss off everyone. They really should have sent more Jedi to take me out. I explained the important points. More blinking came my way. The vines shifted and now a 9th eye was examining me. I have nothing to do with that foolishness. If it matters. Madoran did a pretty neat approximation of shrug given his situation. He felt like he was telling the truth too. Really? And what would you do if you get out of this bind? I asked. There's going to be options instead an ultimatum? The plant sounded surprised. There are always options. People might not like them, they might not deem them acceptable, however there are options. I gave him my opinion on the topic. Madoran's eyes narrowed. You need us for something, he divined. That much is obvious. On Kamino the Separatists deployed a lot of Jedi. The Republic needs proper countermeasures and the Jedi Order is no longer viable. Attempting and failing a coup. That's bad, boys and girls. I let my amusement surface. You want us to fight Jedi? Now he sounded incredulous. I want you to fight traitors to the Republic. You certainly have no problem with fighting Dooku. What's different now? I asked reasonably. Dooku is a Sith. The Jedi countered. I've met the man. Dooku is just a dark Jedi with delusions of grandeur. Simply falling to the dark side or using it don't make someone a Sith. Trust me, I know. Yes, you do. I sense the stench of corruption upon you, Sith. I could feel the echo of a murdered world clinging like a cloak over your shoulders. You will find no disciples here. Madoran growled at me. Won't I? Watch your emotions, Jedi. Your anger is plain to see. Even if he was one of the weirdest aliens I've ever seen. The Force pulsed under my direction and we were shrouded in darkness. No one would listen or see what would transpire from now on. You know my handiwork, Master Jedi. Your fear is delicious. Why are you afraid? What makes your mind recoil from me? I asked while the dark side drew us both in her cold caress. I will not fall, Sith. Do what you will. Madoran's voice shook. He tried to shield himself with the Force, yet only the dark side existed around us. There was no light to warm him, to chase off the encroaching shadows. You call me a Sith, Master Madoran, yet you know not what the title means. Let me show you. It's been a very long time since I needed to break and turn a Jedi. Usually they were more useful safely dead because that way you didn't need to clean after them like they were little children. Still, I did promise Shark Tea, though if her screams in the back of my mind were anything to go by, she wasn't pleased. Tough. What are you afraid of, hear us well? I asked lightly. There's no emotion, only peace. He went to search for security in the Jedi Code. It was so typical. Boring. It's all right, my friend. You no longer have to hide. It's just the two of us. There's no reason to lie. I don't lie to myself, monster. There's no ignorance, only knowledge. I know the truth. You will not turn me. His declaration rang hollow. Do you fear freedom? Perhaps yourself once the light isn't there to bind you any longer? How did you felt when you heard the echoes of Camino? A whole world torn apart and thrown into the maw of the dark side herself. There is no passion. Madoran actually hissed at me. There is serenity. His tentacles shook as if Hurricane tried to tear them off. Serenity? I looked around. You're right for once. I admitted, giving him pause. It's just you, me and the dark side here. She is my friend and my ally. Right now is the first time that I'm at peace since your kind murdered my wife, hear us well. This darkness that surrounds us allows us to be honest with ourselves. I should thank you and the rest of the Jedi. I leaned forward. You set me free. It's thanks to you that I could finally be myself, my friend. I no longer need to pretend that I care for this rotten republic of yours. I no longer need to play nice with the same blind fools who murdered a second wife of mine. I am the monument of your sins, Jedi, and I've come to collect. Do what you will. I will not be part of your madness. There is no chaos. There is harmony. I will die in peace, Sith, for there is the Force. Come on, strike me down as you crave to. Madoran rallied. The Force? Why, it is right here. I waved a hand through the darkness around us. The cool touch of the dark side was pleasant, reassuring. This was my power. The Jedi glared defiantly at me. Tisk, tisk. So fast to throw away your life. To run away, I laughed merrily. Run? I stand defiant to the very end. Look at me, Madoran. I told you, the darkness is my ally. My tool. My mistress. It reveals the truth, for in her embrace we could be ourselves. Yet, she also hides us from everyone. Her greatest gifts are truth and the masks she lets us wear. I am the Dark Lord of the Sith, Madoran. Look at me in despair. My smile became vicious and I let him see me for who I really was. I knew that there were no physical changes, no mask to alter my personality, so I wouldn't get myself killed before I could get my vengeance like the one I wore until Mandalore. There was just one last deception to tear through. I no longer held back in any sense of the word. The darkness around us solidified into a wall that contained my aura of power. My very presence was corruption poisoning everything around me. My mind was oppressive force demanding awe. Madoran looked at me through the Force, the dark side herself stared back and he screamed. Conjuring his nightmares to life needed a mere thought. Hiraswell was a Force adept. The Force was a part of his very nature, and by merely being around me he was slowly being corrupted. His emotions became harder to control and almost impossible to suppress. Do you see now, Jedi? This is the true power of the dark side. I don't need to break your bones or shred your muscles. With my mind alone I make your nightmares manifest. I can drive you mad with fear and shred your sanity until you beg to fall. I can leave you a babbling lunatic until you perish. I will not fall. Madoran spat. I will not be your tool. You're already falling, my friend. Can you imagine it? The lush forests of your homeworld writhing has consumed them and choked the very heavens with black smoke. The little saplings your kind venerates being left as empty husks. Your home becoming death, a wound in the Force like Malakavi and Camino. I trailed off. I could see his nightmares. What he wanted to protect and was terrified to fail. I will not let you. Madoran rasped. He reached for the light side, yet there was only darkness here in this place. He lacked the power and knowledge to break through the field surrounding us. I will bring a fleet to your homeworld, once I've gathered your still living friends. I will turn the very mantle of that wretched planet into ocean of boiling magma, and I will use the extinction of your species to break them all. Look me into the eyes, Jedi, and tell me I lie. No. Madoran's anger and fear spiked. I could see the dark side sinking into him like summer rain being drank by parched lips. No. I will protect them from you. I will stop you, Sith. You will not hurt anyone else ever again. Your kind ends here. The Jedi flailed, grasped for his slipping sanity, and the Force answered. The dark side was eager to serve him, and he lashed at me with everything he had. A titanic telekinetic push powerful enough to crumple a tank slammed into me, and I drank the power like a bubbling glass of wine. The sheer unreasoning anger framing the attack gave the Force delicious tang as I consumed it. Good, my friend. You did good. I smiled benignly at him. Why don't you die? Madoran shouted his frustration at me. You're a Sith. The dark side is weaker. Die? From such a lover's pat? I frowned, letting him see my disappointment. I think I will go visit your world only when I've broken you properly. I will watch it burned by your own hand. A tentacle or whatever you call these. I waved at him. Madoran stared at me with unrestrained hatred. The more he gave in to his emotions, the faster the corruption spread and clouded his mind. He gave out a chopped scream and lashed at me again and again. I simply absorbed or deflected the attacks into the shell of darkness around us. That's it, my friend. Give in to your anger. I goaded him on. You need the power to stop me. It is right here, around us. You simply have to grasp it and use it. No. I will. Hiraswell babbled. Madoran shook. All his eyes narrowed at me, and their irises shone with faint yellow light. His tentacles began shacking wildly when their bright green color began to darken. I will end you. Die. Red-tinted shadows formed around Hiraswell, and he struck at me with Sith lighting that had only one purpose, to punish. Forks of energy with the color of flaking blood splashed over a barrier of living shadows only to be drained into the field surrounding us. Such amusing ignorance you show, my friend. Do you think that the Dark Lord of the Sith is an empty title of aggrandizement? Do you think I earned it just to stroke my ego? It is a description, fool. You'll need decades of learning the secrets of the dark side before you could hurt me with it unless I allow it. No. The useless onslaught petered out. Madoran slumped within the energy cage, still holding in place. No. He repeated. What have I done? His eyes widened in despair. He needed to be consoled, and the dark side did it with relish. Look at me, my friend. It is all right. The dark side is with you now. You would never be alone again. She will hide you from the rest of the galaxy. I spoke soothing words. You're no longer limited by the light, Hiraswell. The dark side has left her mark upon you. As you use her, she will serve you, and you will serve her in return. She will transform you and unlock your full potential. We thrive on conflict. We evolve through it, and that change, that very transformation, is the price we pay. If you're strong enough, then you will not be destroyed by it. This is it. I can feel its power. So much power. Unbound, unrestrained. Power for power's sake? Is this the answer? Madoran asked. It could be. It's up to you to find the answer which suits you, my friend. What are you? Madoran's eyes focused on me, Me? I am a Sith of old. Compared to me, Dooku and even his master Sidious, for all his power, was a mere child playing with the toys we discarded. I told you already, my friend. I am the monument of your sins, Republican Jedi alike. I waved a hand and the energy field restraining the former Jedi shut down. He fell to the floor in a mess of writhing tentacles and it took him irritatingly long to get to a kneeling position. What did you do to me? I opened your eyes. It's what friends do. I will make you a dark Jedi, hear us well, Madoran. You will be an extension of my power and serve my will alone. Not Sith? The Jedi asked in confusion. I snorted. You simply fell, my friend. That does not make you a Sith. Not even close. To be a Sith, it is to walk a long road. You need to crave power for her own sake, until you're strong enough to defeat your own demons. Only through that victory, your chains will be broken and only then you will be free. Only then you might earn the right to call yourself a Sith. I explained. What is thy bidding, my master? Madoran glared his hatred at me. I broke him, might gleefully turn him against everything he held dear, and I trampled on the fragile shards of his ego when I declared him unworthy of being a Sith. Oh, how he hated me right now. Well, that's done. A bit of twisted truth, a few convenient lies, and a Jedi knees broken at my feet, yet I didn't need to lay a finger on him. 1 down, 3 more to go. Are you satisfied, Shark T? Your friend will not die by my hand unless he loses what little wits he has. Damn you. Your fury is like the best wine I've ever tasted. Good girl. Welcome back to the war. RK equals. Part 1. Corellian Cruiser Freedom. Hangar A1. General on deck, Rex snapped. The tattered remains of the 501st, augmented by hand-picked Camino survivors so they could be up to full strength, were gathered in parade formation in one of Freedom's biggest hangars. Rex, it's good to see you back on your feet. I smiled at the clone. Men, Camino was an eye-opener. We were betrayed by the Jedi. They not only turned against the Republic and assassinated the Chancellor, many of those knaves joined the Separatists. They mercilessly cut down our brothers and sisters in the army. It was their actions that led to the destruction of your home. I waved a hand for emphasis. The best thing? Everything I was saying was true. It was the Jedi and their coup who forced my hand into destroying Camino instead of merely ensuring that worlds fall to the enemy. Today a few of them will be making it up to you all. I pointed out to my 4 newest minions who were glowering at my back. Master Madoran and his colleagues volunteered to play op for as I train you to take out rogue Jedi. I beamed at the clones. If their grins were anything to go by, they loved the idea. The same couldn't be said about my minions. They were expendable anyway, so cruff them. I began walking up and down in front of the gathered troopers. The first thing to know about hunting down Jedi: elaborate plans don't work. The longer you plan, the more complex your plan is, the bigger the odds of miserable failure and death. First, the tools of your trade. I stopped in front of a stack of crates full with various beautiful implements of mayhem. I pointed at the top one and it opened to reveal its contents, which flew up until they floated between me and the clones. First, we have various sonic weaponry, blasters, grenades, screamers, the works. Their purpose is to break a Jedi's concentration, which makes the Force much harder to us and thus softens up your target. I waved a hand and the sonic tools flew back into their case. Those are good old-fashioned flame weapons, incendiary grenades, flamethrowers, plasma charges, the works. While a Jedi could deflect fire, that requires concentration. Flames could be used either as a distraction or to finish off the target when they're busy dealing with another threat. Off you go. Next, cluster rockets, artillery, airstrikes, orbital support. It can work if you can pin down the Jedi in a given area. I sent more toys back in the box. Now, blasters. Using them is suboptimal. Expect many shots to get deflected back at you, though our new armors and shields help with that issue. Remember, engaging Jedi with blasters is a last resort. If you absolutely have to do it, seek open terrain. Swarm them, surround them and shoot them from every possible side. It's going to be ugly, but that's your best options. Only a handful of Jedi could survive a few hundred blasters firing at them at the same time from multiple directions. Overwhelming numbers and firepower is the name of the game if you have to take them out with blasters. This leaves mines. They could be quite effective either as an ambush tactic if the Jedi don't pay attention, so you could lure them in, or either as an area denial or to buy you time. Remember, most Jedi love to fight hand to hand. They will charge you, jump, run over walls, and generally make a nuisance of themselves. Last and potentially least, gas attacks. It might work. I stress this point, might. Some Force adepts could make themselves either temporarily or permanently immune to most toxins you could get your hands on. As a general rule, gases that work through skin contact and attack the nervous system are much better than anything that needs inhalation to be useful. If nothing else works, a Jedi could hold their breath for quite long even when they're in the middle of a fight. It would be even better if you have something corrosive to use. Getting their skin dissolved before the toxins are absorbed by the bloodstream is your best bet. I stopped to take a breath and give the clones some time to digest my lecture. You must have noticed a theme: distraction, misdirection. This is your best bet. Confuse the Jedi. Attack from multiple angles in multiple different ways. Take and keep the initiative. Create an opening, exploit it, and make damn sure your target is dead. The glowering at my back intensified. If my minion's looks could kill, I would be a steaming pile of ash on the deck right now, and I wasn't done yet. A situational technique that works against typical Jedi is to exploit their pacifistic and self-sacrificing nature. Target civilians they might be compelled to protect, as long as said people aren't Republic citizens. Doing so might give you an opening. Point of order. I pointed a thumb behind me. It won't work on those reprobates over there. Most of that is common sense, sir. Rex pointed out. You will be surprised, Commander. You've been working alongside Jedi since the war began. Given the number of soldiers in the army and the limited amount of Jedi to go around, most of our troopers haven't had such opportunity. Once I deem you all proficient Jedi hunters, I want you to train the rest of the infantry in the fleet how to do it. You can do that for me, right? 501st? Sir. Yes, sir. The thunder of thousands of throats answered me. Good. One thing that I'll be teaching you is how to shield your minds from the Jedi. The basic is simple: you need to be feeling strong emotions while thinking about something else. Guilt, lust, fear, love, generally anything that won't broadcast you're about to shoot the criffing bastards in the back. It works on most Sith too, with emotions they usually don't use or like: love, mercy, regret, empathy, so to speak. I'll begin teaching the first group of you, while the rest practice anti-Jedi tactics on my friends over there. I turned to wave at my minions. Rex, get me 100 of your best men for personal training. The rest of you, have at them. I jabbed a finger at the Jedi. RK equals. Part 2. RK equals. Flag Bridge. Republic Cruiser Freedom. High orbit above Iriadu. I hope everyone enjoyed their brief vacation, because we're back in business, people, I exclaimed after my small command staff gathered. Half-hearted noises came from Joanna, Wilhuff and my aide Firmus, whom I just got back after leaving him under Holt's tender mercies after Camino. Which reminded me. Before I forget, Piet, after the meeting check, where did we misplace Veers? The last time I recall he was back on Geonosis and about to pull back with the Pharmacy. I'll make a note of it, sir. Firmus tapped it into his pad. It turned out that Admiral Tennant, the nominal GAR commander at Iriadu, didn't survive his injuries from the battle and perished while we were on our way to Camino. That's why I left Vex in charge of the contingent we would be leaving here, consisting of our damaged ships. We more than made up for it by picking up 20 of the new Venotas with their battle groups, along with 15 brand new local cruisers, making up one of Gideon's theater fleets. Good man. Joanna, status of the fleet? Do we have a final disposition? I asked. While we got out a lot of ships from Camino, many suffered various amount of damage. Between Tarkin, Vex and me, we were able to reconstitute a formidable force which we could take with us. Holt called an order of battle to the main holotank. The Freedom blinked on top as the flagship. Below her spread division after division of Venotas. 59 of them. They were joined by the local cruisers and then acclimators chock full with troopers to give us a decent-sized ground force just in case. Then there were the escorts, light cruisers, just 83 we could take, though that number was made up by the frigate packs, 337 of them. In order to take this many ships without torpedoing my deals with the locals, there were some hoops I had to jump through first. Before we could head for the core, we were going to raise hell in cis space and make sure the Separatists would be too busy to mount a proper offensive in the western sector for the time being. First we were going to choose one of their staging grounds which doubled as supply depots and raise it, Then we would go to Naboo, relieve the siege there and ensure the enemy attention in the region would be divided. Only then we would choose the best way to either Coruscant or Mandalore, whatever proved practical. Nevertheless, the total ship numbers were impressive. Most impressive. You two outdid yourselves. Logistics? I praised my subordinates. Everything should be loaded by noon today. We need to choose destination. Tarkin answered and called up the galaxy map, then zoomed down to Eriadu and the surrounding sectors. Intel suggests Triton, Sullust and Dark Nell as enemy staging areas. They estimate a sector fleet spread out among those locations for repair and resupply. Sullust and Triton are the primary staging grounds for attacks against Eriadu, while Dark Nell is a major waypoint towards the core. It is one of the jump-off points for assaults on Naboo. Joanna added. Dark Nell. I pointed at the Nelchar system. From there we can jump directly to Naboo. It lessens the chance we would be intercepted or outraced by enemy response. Objectives? Wilhuff asked. We make a point. I put up on display the preliminary assault plan for that system. We will exit hyperspace 6 light hours from the Triple Star, send in scouts and then execute tactical insertion. Joanna, I want the Freedom and her battle group for something special. I zoomed in on the only inhabitable or real planet in the system. Dark Nell became huge and her orbital defenses appeared as angry red symbols. That's audacious. Joanna glared at me. Your ship is built to take and dish the necessary punishment. She'll be all right. Holt grumbled but didn't argue. Wilhuff, you'll be commanding the second part of the fleet. Once we're in position and everyone focuses on us, you'll jump in and hit them from behind. We'll be laying waste to everything in that system ASAP. Then once the fleet reforms either in system or at one predetermined staging points, we'll head off to Naboo. If there's third to a half of a separatist sector fleet there we should be all right. If we don't waste any time. Tarkin interjected. We can take the whole thing if we have to, however we'll suffer casualties I would prefer to avoid at this time. Besides, they're likely to come after us anyway. I would rather fight them at Naboo alongside whatever friendly forces are in that system. After Naboo, all hyperlanes leading into the core will be heavily monitored and we know what will wait us in the end of the route if we go there directly. Joanna asked. I lean towards striking through the Separatists' mid-rim territories, hit targets of opportunity as they present themselves and break out into the west part of the galaxy. Once there we'll have many more options. However, that's just a goal. We won't be finalizing any plans before Naboo and getting any and all intelligence our people there could give us. I told them. That's settled then. Let's refine the plan for Dark Nell. And get some contingencies ready, Tarkin said. How big a part of the fleet do you want for the direct assault on the planet? No more than a third. We want them to come after us, not to run. Joanna answered. I agree. We'll be taking all Block 2 Venotas with us? Their improved Guardian might prove quite useful. You're going to have every small craft in system coming after you. Tarkin nodded. You don't need to leave any for me. I'll take it under consideration. Firmus, any thoughts? Is there anything in the plan that strikes you as particularly idiotic? Eh? Sir, Piet stammered and looked like a fish freshly plucked out of the water. Welcome back to the war. RK equals. Part 3. Garfob Kilo. My last hair. Cold rain splashed over Ki-Adi-Mundi while he sneaked towards one of the Republic bases housing hyperspace-capable craft. It took him weeks to sneak through the front lines while avoiding patrols of his own 21st Nova Corps. Jet and Bukhara were determined to get him after their initial ambush failed. The Jedi Master had the Separatists to thank for the opportunity to slip away from the city where he hid after his men betrayed him. While the clones were too busy hunting him down, the enemy commander launched an offensive that nicely got their attention. Almost getting their forward HQ overran with them, and it was just the opening Mundi needed. Managing to avoid all the patrols, aerial and orbital surveillance on the other hand was hard. He was a distinctive individual who couldn't simply blend in with a group of refugees. That left the Jedi Master relying heavily on the Force to conceal his presence from everything he could think of. Most of the time he had to substitute raw power for knowledge and experience, however finally Ki was beginning to get the hang of it. Stealth was simple, in theory. Wrap the Force around yourself like a cloak and you might be able to convince people looking at you that you weren't there. However, that worked best when in crowd and couldn't fool electronic surveillance. What Mundi ended up doing was much harder, though the basic building block was the same. He did cover himself with the Force, then had to figure out how to bend light around himself to become literally invisible. Then there was thermal and more exotic sensors he needed to fool. It was hard, tiring, and the main reason why it took him so long to get to Fob Kilo. However, he was finally in place. There was a nasty storm in place which significantly cut down the visibility, and Mundi decided to use its cover to his advantage. Getting to the outer fence was easy. Jumping over it too. Doing all that without landing on a mine or tripping either motion or seismic sensors, not so much. Master Mundi had to use everything he knew in order to ensure he had less presence than a ghost. By the time he was through the perimeter and inside the base, the Jedi had to find a nice dark space in a corner and rest for a bit. The amount of energy he used so far was staggering and left him exhausted, yet he did it. He was in. Mundi stood in his corner for half an hour before he felt confident enough to continue sneaking. He scampered out of the way of patrols and security droids, avoided loaded vehicles preparing to head for the front, and finally made his way to the spaceport, where his job became harder. There were fighters being serviced nearby, freighters and transport shuttles coming in and leaving all the time, thus the whole area was naturally deemed a security risk and thus heavily guarded. Fortunately, most of the measures in place were meant to stop things coming and not leaving. In the end, the Jedi Master ended up hitching a ride under an old-fashioned wheeled truck while keeping himself invisible. His endurance was nearly gone by the time his transport actually got into the spaceport and parked near a freighter unloading MRE crates. With his last strength, Mundi sneaked into a ship preparing to leave just before its ramp sealed shut behind him. It didn't really matter where the freighter was headed to. All Mundi really needed was a safe place to get his breath, and then he would either continue hiding if the destination was useful or have a polite word with the crew. However, his first point of business was to find a convenient hiding hole and recover. =RK= Flag Bridge. Republic Cruiser Freedom. High orbit above Iriadu. Other concerns? Last-minute intelligence? I asked my staff. There were a few revisions and alternatives of the basic plan we made when Piet pointed out that our target was a waypoint to the core. While we were going to reduce the system because of that fact, we forgot to take into account the possibility of enemy reinforcements going for the front dropping unannounced. We knew it would take at least a few hours for ships from Sullust or Triton to reinforce Darknell, however San Rafsik could get there within an hour. 1.5 top. We spent the rest of the morning tweaking the plan of attack until it was almost time to leave. A contact of my wife in Separatist space heard few interesting rumors but nothing that directly affects us. Tarkin answered. There's still a bit of time, so give. What are our friends in the Confederacy cooking up now? I asked, while Joanna pointedly ignored us and get back to checking the status of the fleet. It looks like a couple of our own might have defected. The Zinji, mother and son from Fondor. They were stationed near the corporate sector when the enemy offensive began rolling in. Instead of fighting or avoiding action, they appear to have cut a deal and began building a small empire of their own out there. The corporate sector? Didn't it fall while we were just getting out of the unknown regions? I frowned. So we heard. It seems to have fallen, just not to the Separatists as we assumed. Wolf shrugged. It's just a rumor so far. That's going to be a problem in the long run. It's not like we could get a fleet there before dismantling most of the Confederacy first. I just hope no one else gets the bright idea to emulate those fools. If that happens, we'll need to step on them hard. Yes. Tarkin grumbled. Letting warlords run unchecked will have unpleasant consequences. We'll have to clean up their mess when the Separatists are done for. Anything else of interest? The captain isn't exactly thrilled you turned one of his hangars into a war zone. Joanna chipped in. It's a convenient place to train anti-Jedi tactics. I told her. This I need to see. Tarkin perked up. Once we're at Naboo, everyone should be stowing their gear and getting a few hours of R&R before we hit our target. That includes us. =RK=. Part 4. Darknell. Nelchar system. When the war came to Darknell, there was no warning anyone in the system took seriously. Long-range sensors on a couple of traffic control stations registered blips appearing and vanishing in interstellar space, yet no one paid them much attention. It was deemed as just another glitch for maintenance to deal with by overworked and overly stressed controllers who had to deal with whole fleets of military ships and their logistics train on top of all the usual commerce that passed through Darknell. While the total amount of freight shipping through declined since the conflict began, the Nelchar system itself was getting overcrowded with Confederate shipping and depots for supplies being sent to the core. Dark Nell was supposed to be safe. The only enemy who could have possibly posed any threat were those maniacs at Iriadu, however they were mauled a few weeks ago. Besides, not only the Dark Nell's system defense fleet was ready to meet any troublemakers, there were powerful Confederate formations present at all times, either to guard the separatist investments, passing through or replenishing their supplies. Only lunatic would strike Nelchar, that's what the locals believed as they happily went on with their day-to-day affairs and enjoyed the bounty provided by the Confederate presence. That happy state of affairs continued for more than a year before the Republic came knocking on the front door. It was early in the morning local time when without warning hundreds of Y-wing bombers exited hyperspace on the edge of Dark Nell's gravity well, hit their afterburners and screamed for the atmosphere. Before anyone could react, the planet's cluttered orbitals became home of 30 new large ships and over 100 of escorts. It was a miracle that there were no collisions from the abrupt and surprising transition. It was a small, short-lived mercy. Dark Nell's orbitals lit up in a storm of energy. Crystallized bolts of plasma, condensed thermonuclear fire rivaling the hearts of the stars themselves and gravity itself were all unleashed in a merciless onslaught upon the locals. Weapon satellites, freighters and couple of munificents were ravaged before they knew what hit them. Before the planetary shields could begin to raise missiles and torpedoes rained in their thousands upon a single hemisphere. Fiery flowers blossomed upon the surface as compact proton and concussion munitions unleashed their fury. They soon raised towards the heavens in shining fireballs resembling the forgotten horror of a nuclear bombardment. Whole cities shook to rubble as seismic charges leveled industrial zones and transport infrastructure. Spaceports vanished behind the blinding glare of heavy assault munitions, which leveled whole neighborhoods as a mere afterthought. For all its pyrotechnic glory, Dark Nell's fiery fate was merely a sideshow, something the Y-wings to get busy with away from the voracious appetite of the separatist umbrella. The real hell was unleashed up in space. When the Freedom arrived, she and her consorts acted with uncanny precision and coordination. Each of them chose multiple unwitting targets and opened fire while the enemy was still busy comprehending the disaster that just dropped on their heads. Confederate warships, Dark Nell's own defenders, mere merchantmen or civilian ships being in the wrong place at the wrong time, it didn't matter. Freedom and her brood roared as one and anything around them that wasn't the Republic Navy died. Only a pair of Lucree hulks which had their shields on for some arcane reason survived the first barrage only to be singled for the Corellian cruiser's particular attention. The second battleship even managed to shoot once before its shields overloaded under enough firepower to wipe out a small fleet. Then the hapless Lucree Hugh had no option but to melt and vaporize before its reactor went critical and it ignited itself like a short-lived star. The Freedom and her consorts altered their course so their escorts would fly through the thickest concentration of merchant shipping nearby while the capital ships went for the nearest Golan defense platform. Dark Nell had only 3 of those and only one in this immediate area. The Freedom led the way, letting her colossal shields absorb everything the Golan could throw at her and she replied in kind. =Ashe=. Flag bridge. Corellian cruiser Freedom. High orbit above Dark Nell. Getting my own body back had unexpected consequences. While I was directing the Freedom and nearby Venotas through battle meditation, I could perceive the world differently. I knew that I was slower, physically weaker and a bit easier to damage. It was easier to tire myself when not leaning on the Force to cheat. My connection with my power wasn't stronger because I got my original body back. Yet, I could perceive the battle in a more clear, more tangible way for lack of better words. The void of space crackled with energy. Fuel ignited in thermonuclear power simulating whole ships. Breached reactors shone like neutron stars sending lethal radiation everywhere before detonating and shredding everything in range. Torrents and vultures dueled in the crosshairs of Umbrella and Guardian alike. Missile swarms consumed each other before their targets vanished behind what looked like solid walls of counterfire. Each time the Freedom unleashed her fury something died a fiery death. It was chaos, pure mind-blowing terrifying madness. It was beautiful, glorious. I could feel the durasteel determination of my people. Their resolve not to fail me. I could sense the bowel-loosening terror of my enemies who were still scrambling to form a coherent response to our attack. War was our art and we were busy creating a masterpiece with the shredded hulls of our fallen foes. It was magnificent.